All right, are we on? No?
You are sharing. It's just how to join Teams is what's been shared. So you'll need to go. Yep, you're on. That's on the slide.
We're on. Well, as you can see. Hello, and thanks everyone for joining in and showing your interest in breastfeeding. And yes, I'm Elizabeth, and as you probably already worked out, although I'm a nurse and a midwife and a child development and all those other things, I'm not techno savvy. And I've got Mel somewhere who's just left me to sort this out because Tisha's run away in Western Australia having a lovely time. How dare she? Anyway, okay, so fingers crossed it all goes fine. Like my biggest, I can do emails and that's about it. So we'll just see how we go. All right. So yes, first of all, we want to acknowledge those first Australians, and for generations, they've survived on breast milk only. I did work out in remote WA some time ago, and those women, they didn't need anyone to tell them about breastfeeding. They knew what to do. They wouldn't have survived all those thousands of years if they didn't breastfeed. And if they couldn't breastfeed, they would have an auntie or a sister or a mother or someone would do that for them. And when we talk about the 2000 days, I think way back then they had the 2000 days. They had that family support. Everyone looked out for kids and yeah, they knew how to do it. Something that said one of the ABA, Australian Breastfeeding Association conferences was called Ancient Art, Modern Miracle. And I think that describes breastfeeding perfectly. So we acknowledge our first Australians and anyone and any of their descendants watching today. So learning objective, oh, sorry, there's my lovely photo. I love that photo. Learning objectives for today. Hopefully you've watched the other presentations and an understanding about the 2000 Days project. And for some of you, you might know nothing about breastfeeding and think, what's the big deal? You just stick the baby on and feed. Hopefully we can increase your knowledge. For others of you, you may have breastfed your babies or may have had a sister, a mother, whatever, breastfeed. And we hope to refresh your knowledge and yeah, reaffirm what you know. So increasing your confidence in engaging in conversations with your families about breastfeeding and child health, and also knowing where to refer and access further information. I hope I'm not rattling on too fast. Please tell me to slow down. I am called the Energizer Bunny as a nickname, so hopefully I don't ramble on too fast. Just pull me up. Thanks, Steph. Okay. So a big name, a lactation consultant. What is a lactation consultant? Okay, so it's someone who knows a bit about the production of milk. So probably a farmer would be classed as a lactation consultant. They need to know a lot about milk production, whether it be cows or goats or buffalo. But of course, when we're talking about lactation consultancy, we generally say about human milk production. Okay, and do we need lactation consultants? Certainly my sister thought that was a bit of a joke. She just breastfed her children and thought, what do you need to study all that stuff for? And it wasn't until we had a relative in our family that had difficulty she realised that for some people it's not just quite that simple and not quite that natural and need a little bit of help to steer them along. Okay, so having talked about breastfeeding, and you can probably tell I'm a little bit pro breastfeeding, having studied it for a long time, but it's not everything. So if women are really struggling for whatever reason or they really don't want to breastfeed, it's more important for their mental health and social emotional health that they're available for their babies. So more important than breastfeeding is a mum's mental health and enjoying her baby. So we want to change this scenario to this, where we've got a woman absolutely delighting in her baby. And that's what's the most important thing. All right, so breastfeeding. Breastfeeding and breast milk, why? What's the big gig with breastfeeding? All right, so some of the advantages. Oh, here we go. Okay, so these are some of the reasons why breastfeeding and breast milk is so important. And we're going to go through those. All right, so total nutrition. Breastfeeding provides everything a baby needs from the time of birth, in that first few minutes or first hour of birth, right up till they're 6 months of age. They don't need anything else. They don't need water. They don't need anything, just breast milk until around 6 months of age. And then they need to start on some solid foods. The only thing with that would be maybe medicine, of course, if they need that, but otherwise they just need breast milk. Even in the tropics and really hot conditions, the breast milk will adjust and give them exactly what they need. And so we call that exclusive breastfeeding, when you only have, a baby only has breast milk. All right. So protection. So breastfeeding or breast milk's not just about milk and providing all those nutrients a baby needs to thrive. It also provides protection. And we might see that in this next slide. Okay, so there we go. So you mightn't be able to read all this. I can't. Actually, that's a good idea. Put my glasses on. So over here in breast milk is mostly the calcium and vitamins and minerals and protein and everything a baby needs. All this stuff is other that's in breastfeeding, in breast milk. It's more than just nutrition. It's a living fluid. Over here we have different sorts of cells, macrophages and things like that help fight infection. There's something like 200 prebiotics in breast milk that feed the probiotics. And this helps babies prevent infections from when they're born. Things like there's things with special care with babies when they're born prem, and in older babies, gastro infections, ear infections, respiratory infections, all those have a lower risk in breastfed babies. Even stem cells are found in breast milk, and we're constantly finding new things in breast milk. So that helps fight those infections and prevent infections. And a lot of these things, hormones and all sorts of things, help to mature a baby's gut. And that first milk, colostrum, which comes first, is really concentrated on all this. Very small amounts of colostrum, that first milk that's produced in a mum's breast for the first 2 days maybe, before it changes to mature milk. But that's what it's doing, lining the baby's gut and preventing infections. Sorry. Okay. And so health things as well. So for both the baby and mum, there's long-term benefits. So we've talked about the short-term with gut infections and ear infections and everything else, but also in breastfed babies, there's a lower risk of some childhood cancers, of diabetes and of obesity, which is the new thing that we've got to deal with now in our modern society, is obesity is becoming a real problem. So these, this lowers the rates of all those sort of things if a baby's breastfed. For the mum, again, lower risks of some cancers such as ovarian and breast cancers, and also obesity as well for the mum. They've worked out that for each month a mum breastfeeds, she has a decreased risk of 4% in obesity. Up to about 9 months of age, 9 months when the baby's still breastfeeding. So every month she's got a decreased risk of obesity. All right, so, sorry, going. Okay, more about breast milk. So it's unique to a baby's age. So that very first milk we just talked about is colostrum, which is a powerhouse, a small but powerhouse. If a baby's born early, a premature baby, the mother will be producing different milk to if that baby's born at term. A 1-week-old baby's milk is different to a 5-month-old baby's milk. And even during the day, from the morning, the breast milk is different to the evening breast milk, which in the evening is often higher in fat concentration. The gender, there's even information coming out that your breasts produce different milk if you have a boy baby versus a girl baby. So they're all finding more and more things out about breast milk. And bonding. When we did a local survey, there's World Breastfeeding Week every year in August, and when we did a survey a few years ago, out of everything that mums knew about breast milk, this was the #1 thing that they did breastfeed for. They found that bonding was such an important thing. And it just seems innate that they want to breastfeed. Mother's confidence and self-esteem. So when mums can breastfeed, that does give them that confidence and they do feel good about themselves. It is something that they can only provide for their babies. Yeah, so I have a mum recently who couldn't breastfeed her second child, and she really did feel she didn't bond well with that baby. However, with her third child, she was determined, and she is breastfeeding her third baby, and she's loving herself. Okay, so linking this into the first 2,000 days, the first thing, like we've talked about, is that vital protection against illness. And also for growth, it contains everything for a baby to grow well. But what they also find as far as the mum, and this might be with your families, it reduces their stress response. The oxytocin, the hormones produce, reduce their stress response, reduce their cortisol, which is what causes stress levels, and it increases with that decreasing thing of those stress things, that increases their desire to be with their baby. And promotes maternal behaviours and builds that healthy attachment, which isn't that what the 2,000 days is all about. And in the vulnerable, it can greatly reduce the risk of maltreatment, especially neglect. There's a project happening, the 2019 breastfeeding strategy that the government's been working with as well, and they're promoting for women who are incarcerated in prisons, trying to work out ways they can have mother-baby units so that they can stay with their baby, or at least they can provide breast milk with their baby, which is a really important thing, something that they can do and feel better about themselves. And also, because of this, decreasing the stress response, they are actually, and wanting to be with their baby, it may help with those repeat offenders, that they don't want to end up back in jail because they want to be with their babies. So continuing with some of these advantages, of course, it's free. It's on tap, ready to go. You don't need anything special. For the mum, they might need extra calories. They just need to increase their intake of the normal foods that they have, not just chocolate, things like that, and high carbs. It's all those protein foods and everything else, just generally increasing just a little bit of their intake in most foods. So free, a great advantage for low-income earners, of course. Yeah, and see, the availability, of course. This is really important, and especially at the moment when we go into lockdown. And thanks everyone for joining. And we're all topsy-turvy sort of thing going on. I didn't know if we'd be here today. But for mums, this is a thing about availability, about if they're not breastfeeding, well, what can they get at the shops? Are they going to sell out of formula? Are we going to get formula from the countries overseas? It's a real thing in lots of crises in the world. But if the mum can breastfeed, she doesn't have to worry about that, and the baby has what they need. So the environment, I don't know if you can see the poster behind me, but it's got all these environmental aspects of breastfeeding. There's no waste, there's no manufacture, there's no costs with sterilisation, there's no need for extra water to sterilise and boil things and make up bottles of formula. The production of bottles, the production of formula and everything else that goes with it, all those environmental costs we don't need if we just breastfeed. So hopefully I've convinced you it's a wonderful thing to do. And how are we going with that? So the World Health Organisation and the National Health and Medical Research Council of Australia recommends 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding. As we talked about, nothing else, just breast milk unless they need some medicine. So how is Australia going if that's what it's being recommended worldwide? So Australian breastfeeding rates. Initiation, 96%. That's people who start off breastfeeding on that first hour or first day of baby's birth. Pretty good, 96%. After 2 weeks, well, we haven't got exact figures on that. However, by 3 months, 39%. So not so good. And by 5 months, so before we're meant to introduce solids, 15%. Only 15% are exclusively breastfeeding. So not looking so good. And here's a graph demonstrating this. This is 2010. It's the latest statistics we have. maybe we'll get more out of the current survey, although they didn't ask about breastfeeding, did they? Okay, so here we are starting up high. This is at 2 weeks even, 90%. This top line is about any breastfeeding. So as in mixed feeding, some breastfeeding and maybe some formula. 60%, this bottom line, is what's exclusive breastfeeding. So they're starting off high, but by 2 weeks, sorry, you can't see that. I'm looking at the wrong screen here. So sorry, with my cursor. Is that right, Steph? Can you see my cursor now? Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not used to having 2 screens. I told you I'm not tech savvy. All right, so this line up here is any breastfeeding at all, and this is exclusive breastfeeding, which is what we're hoping we're doing. We're down to 60% by 2 weeks, and then you can see it gradually tail off. Around here, it's not going to be exclusive because we're introducing solids. So that's normal around this age, but it's this slow drop off here. But what's more dramatic too is this drop off here. Oh, sorry, go back. Is this drop off here, which shows if we're mixed feeding by 2 weeks, there's a huge drop off to stopping breastfeeding here, whatever that is, 15, nearly 20% is dropping off quickly. So whereas where we're exclusively breastfeeding, it's a slower drop in it. So it's really important we try and work on this exclusive breastfeeding. Okay. So most common reasons for not breastfeeding. So what is happening? Why aren't we breastfeeding? A third or just over a third say previous unsuccessful experience with breastfeeding. Just over a quarter say, so my partner can share the feeding, and a quarter say infant formula as good as breast milk. So let's have a look at these. So if they were previously unsuccessful, we've got to look at what's happening there. So why are they unsuccessful? So it's getting that right information for these mums right from pregnancy, right from conception, really, as soon as they, find out they're pregnant, thinking about and having those conversations. So if you're working with mums pregnant, it's having those conversations with them and saying, oh, have you thought about how you're going to feed your baby? Okay, so starting then, they can get information from their midwives they go and see. If they're really anxious, I run a clinic over at the hospital here in Coffs Harbour, and I do see pregnant women. And also I often see women who have struggled that first time. So they are welcome to come and have a conversation and talk about what happened last time and what can we do differently. Like I said about my one of my ladies that I'm seeing currently, she came and saw me in pregnancy, in fact twice, and then we were in contact in early days, and she managed to breastfeed exclusively her baby, and she is over the moon, loving herself, like I said. All right, so it's getting that information and support while they're still pregnant, or if they had difficulties finding out what happened last time, they mightn't be able to find out. And my ladies didn't have a clue what went on, but it just didn't work out. So giving them that information. They don't have to see a lactation consultant. They can talk to a midwife and look at other resources, which we'll be going to soon. Okay. So what else? About dad. How about the partner sharing the feeding? To get the partner involved. Well, look at this beautiful photo. There's so many things dads can do. They have a different hold on babies. Babies feel their dads differently, or their partners, to the mums. So there's so much more that a dad can do than just feed the baby. And I think dad partner support is really important for a mum to successfully breastfeeding. So it's really important he knows about these benefits of breastfeeding and why. Often some of them are like, well, it's going to be free, that'll be great. But it's more knowing more than just it's going to be free to help that mum, if she does have issues, get through those difficult times, if she has difficult times. But very important to include the partners in those early days or even in pregnancy. Have they thought about this and what the advantages are? So dads can get involved, hugging the baby, or maybe even bathing the baby. There's different ways they might have to do things like that, dunking a baby. So they have different input to what the mums might have in, but these are ways that they can get involved and spend time with their babies and get to know their babies. And changing nappies. Sometimes dads think, oh, I just get to change the nappies. Changing the nappy, it's letting them know that from day one, even before that baby can interact much, they can look at their dads. And from day one, even changing something as mundane as maybe changing a baby's nappy, they can be interacting with their babies, and it actually stimulates their brain growth, growing their baby's brain. And I think if they know that those simple things aren't just changing the nappy and getting up in the middle of the night, it's actually time they can spend developing that relationship, but stimulating their baby's brain growth. They need to know this. All right. So what about that breast milk's the same as formula? So here you can see this poster. You can't read it, of course, but this is what is in breast milk. Sorry, I'm on the wrong screen again. This is what's in breast milk here, and this is what's in formula. And this poster is 10 years old. So you can imagine we found a lot more, scientists have, not me, but scientists have found there's a lot more stuff in breastfeeding, in breast milk, sorry. So is it the same? Definitely not. Breast milk, like we said before, is a living fluid, and formula will never be able to have all the things that breast milk has in it. But also saying this, there are times when we need formula. So it's great that formula is developing and is adding things, because there are times when we really do need it, and we do need it to be as good as possible. But it will never be as good as breast milk. All right. Yeah. So the previous ones were the reasons why women didn't breastfeed at all. These are why they don't continue in the first 6 months. So, and these are all interacting, all right? So if the mum is not making enough breast milk, the baby will be, I'm on the wrong screen. If the mum's not making enough breast milk, the baby will be unsettled. They'll be hungry. If the baby's not attaching properly, then they won't be stimulating the breast and they won't be making enough milk, which then the baby will be unsettled and breastfeeding will be painful, because if the baby's not attaching properly, it's going to be pinching the mum's nipples. So these things can all relate to attaching. So, and also what do I see in my lactation clinic? So I run a clinic 1 day a week in the community to see postnatal at the Child and Family Health Clinic, seeing women after they've had their babies, as well as the one on another day a week at the hospital seeing pregnant women and women on the ward. But in my postnatal clinic, what are the most frequent things are sore nipples and attachment and not enough breast milk. So we're talking about not enough breast milk. Is it real or is it perceived? Do women think they're not making enough breast milk, or are they really not making enough breast milk? All right, so these are some normal baby behaviours that can get misinterpreted. So normal feeding frequency. In the early days, a baby will feed really frequently. They might feed anything from 8 to 12 times in a 24-hour period. The first day they won't. Day one, they only have tiny little bits amount of milk, and they often have a good sleep on those first day or two. But after that, they wake up and they might want to feed really, really frequently. So that's normal. And mums, it's really good if they know what's normal. So that's the early days. They spend a lot of time feeding because they take a while to feed, plus wanting to feed frequently. That's normal. As time goes on, they start to space their feeds and they get much quicker at breastfeeding. So that's a normal progression where it might be 8 to 12 times. After a few days or weeks, it might be 5 to 6 times in a 24-hour period. Some babies continue up around that 8 mark, but often they just gradually start to take more in each feed as their stomachs expand and they can go longer between feeds. Cluster feeds. This is something that happens probably every day, is really normal. Around about 7 days, maybe early, maybe later of age, a baby starts to get fussy in the afternoons or in the evenings. And this has been known for generations. Grandparents used to call it arsenic hour or disaster hour, they just want to feed a lot. This is normal, and this is a common time when mums think, oh my God, I haven't got enough milk. The baby's been fine all day, but now they're wanting to feed constantly. Because they're feeding constantly, their breasts are feeling really empty, and so they think, I haven't got enough milk. However, the baby fed half an hour ago or an hour ago, so they're not going to have a lot of milk, and they did have a big feed. They don't need a big feed. What they're doing at this time of the day is they're stacking up on little feeds of really fat-rich milk, When we talked about the day milk changing during the day, and I said in the evenings it's high in fat, that's what they're doing, stacking up on all these little bits of high fat milk, low volume, high fat. And usually they'll do this over a 2 or 3 or even 4 hour period where they want to feed every half an hour or 40 minutes or something. At the end of that period, then they usually clunk out and have a really good sleep. Yeah, that's usually their best sleep of the 24 hours after that cluster feedings. So mums and families need to know that cluster feeding is normal. They haven't lost their milk. It's just a normal thing. Some fussing is normal. The general thing is 1 fussy period a day and 1 fussy day a week is really normal. Sometimes they'll have a whole day where they just want to seem to feed frequently all the time. And again, mums will think, oh, lost my milk. But in actual fact, what the baby's trying to do is stimulate those breasts, produce more milk, and then the next day they'll settle back down into their normal pattern. Sometimes it takes 2 days, but sometimes it's just 1 day. So again, knowing this is normal and not thinking the baby's starving, I've got to go and get some other milk for the baby. And poos. I thought I'd throw that one in there about normal poos, is that the first days they're sticky, black, tarry looking poos. But then after maybe about 3 or 4 days of age, the baby will be doing lots of poos, runny, mustardy sort of poos. That's really normal. That's a really good sign. You get excited about pooey nappies because you know the baby's doing well. But it's a normal thing that they're runny poos and lots of them in those first 3 or 4 weeks. Gradually they slow down so that by about 4 weeks, a baby might poo once a day or even once a week or even once a fortnight. In a baby that's being fully breastfed with nothing else and is gaining weight, that's really normal. They don't get constipated. Very rare for a breastfed baby to get constipated. After 2 weeks, just look out because there'll be lots of it and it'll still be pretty runny and go everywhere and go through a few nappies. So look out. But that is normal. Okay. So that's normal behaviours which sometimes can get misinterpreted that there's something wrong with the milk supply. So how do we tell we have got enough milk? All right, so the easiest way is, yes, with a nappy. So it's a very common concern with mums, like we said, with those behaviours. It's undermining them and they're thinking maybe I haven't got enough milk. So a quick thing is to think, well, if it's going in, it's going to come out. So if the baby's got plenty of wet nappies, we usually say a minimum of 5 heavy disposable nappies or 6 to 8 if they're cloth nappies. I don't know if anyone uses cloth nappies anymore, but that's what we reckon. But around about 5 of these disposable nappies, and they should feel heavy. Now, what's heavy? Heavy is it's different from when it went on to when it came off. When it goes on, a dry nappy is firm and it's very, very light. When it comes off, it should feel a bit bulky and squishier and heavier than the dry nappy. For mum's unsure, she can pour 60 mils of water into a dry nappy and then feel the difference, that it goes squishy and heavy. The other thing, sometimes the baby wheezes all over the place when you're changing that nappy. And again, that's a really positive sign. Instead of worrying about it's going all over you or your partner or the dad, I think fantastic, that baby's getting plenty to drink. So that's the easiest way to tell that the baby's gaining weight, and that urine should be pale, like just a hint of yellow in those heavy nappies, and also 3 or more dirty nappies. Like we said, those poos are a really good indication in those first 3 to 4 weeks. So lots of poos means lots of milk going in. So at least 3 or more dirty nappies, and some they're dirty every nappy change. The only thing there is the size. If it's a tiny smear of poo, we have great conversations. There's lactation consultants and child and family health nurses and midwives. But the poos, if it was a tiny smear, like you got a cotton bud and did a line down a nappy, that's not a good size poo. So we say 3 or more good size poos about the size of the baby's fist. Not your fist, the baby's fist. Okay, so if the baby's doing that and having some weight gain, then fantastic. That baby is getting plenty to drink. So it's those reassuring factors to look for. Like I said, if it's coming out, it must be going in. All right. But what if the mum finds that that is the case, that the baby isn't gaining weight, that the baby hasn't got a real good output and it's a true low supply? What can we do with that? So simply put, increase the breast stimulation. How breast milk is made is the baby sucks at the nipple and stimulates the mum's brain to say, hey, we need milk. And then within about 10 seconds, two hormones are released, and one comes to the breast and squeezes that milk out. You probably don't need to know too much about this. I might be going into too much depth here, but basically it works somehow like that. Like every time the baby goes to feed at the breast, the brain of the mum stimulated to produce milk and to squeeze that milk from the breast into the nip down to the nipple. So, and the regular draining of the breast. So if the baby drinks well at the breast and drains that breast as best they can, then the message goes to the brain, hey, we need more milk. So if the mum's milk supply really is down, we need to boost that breast stimulation. So easiest way, more frequent feeds. Put the baby to the breast more often, offer another 2 feeds a day, go back and forward between the breast a few times and build up that supply, especially in the early weeks. Those first 2 to 3 weeks are the best chance to build that supply up. So simple, more breast stimulation, more draining of the breast by more frequent feeds. The other option is to express after feeds, either hand express or with a hand pump or electric pump. And mums don't have to have all these hand electric pumps before they have the baby. It seems to be come with the kit almost these days, but you don't have to have that. Hand expressing works fine for a lot of women. So expressing, again, is another way of draining the breast. If the baby's doesn't want to feed more or is not stimulating the breasts effectively, then the mum can express as well to help stimulate. The other important thing is to check the attachment, which we're going to talk about soon, about how that baby's on the breast, that the baby can drain that breast and stimulate that supply. And the other thing is to avoid dummies. So the thing with dummies or pacifiers is the baby sucks on those. If they have it a lot, they'll suck on that. They tire themselves out. When they go to the breast, they don't feed so effectively. So it's avoiding dummies. If mum feels she really needs to, okay, but only after a feed. But certainly if you've got a low supply, you want to try and avoid that and just offer those more frequent feeds. And with these things, usually that will just that extra feeds, extra drainage of the breast will kick on the supply. And we even have, I'll show you, relactate. So for some mums, this is how good breast stimulation can be, that mums who have given up breastfeeding can actually go and stimulate their breasts and start producing more milk. Okay, I've got this photo too to mention about this toddler here breastfeeding, that is perfectly normal. And in fact, the World Health Organization recommends breastfeeding babies till they are 2 years of age and beyond, as long as the mum and baby are happy to feed. So of course they're having solids by that stage too, after 6 months. But mum can breastfeed as long as she wants. It is normal to breastfeed, and there's lots of advantages. Also, the longer a woman does breastfeed, any breastfeeding is good. A day breastfeeding, 1 feed breastfeeding, that colostrum, fantastic, is good. But the longer a mum can breastfeed, the stronger those advantages are that we talked of for both the mum and the baby. Okay, so in COVID times, as we're in, what we found when it first started was women were ringing up the Australian Breastfeeding Association and coming in and seeing lactation consultants, etc., to find out about how they can go back to breastfeeding. So there's cases where a baby might have been a couple of weeks old and it wasn't working out quite so well, and the mum thought, well, we'll just give formula. It's women like that were contacting the association or seeking information to think, hang on a sec, the only way I can protect my baby is by breastfeeding. They recognise that powerfulness of breastfeeding and the immune factors and keeping their baby as healthy as possible. So there was women, like I say, with a couple of week-old babies, someone with a month or more old babies, or even ones that had totally weaned their babies and decided, we need some breast milk here. That's the only thing I can offer my child. And they relactated. So it is possible. Even women who adopt babies and have never breastfed are able to stimulate their breasts to produce milk. Amazing stuff, hey? All right. So back to the difficulties. So we've talked now about the breast milk, whether it's a real low supply or whether it's a perceived low supply. And so the other thing is sore nipples, and we keep talking about attachment. So what's this attachment, Bizzo? Well, it's like a magic wand. If we can get that attachment right, most things will flow on and everything should be fine, usually, most times. So what is this attachment thing? Well, this is a baby beautifully attached to the breast. So what do we mean by attachment? It's the baby having a big wide open mouth so it can take as much nipple and breast tissue into its mouth. The aim is we're trying to fill that baby's mouth with breast tissue, and then when that happens, the baby is able to milk the breast by using its jaw, its tongue, and it's using a vacuum to keep that breast tissue in its mouth. So if they get a big mouthful of breast tissue, they can milk the breast better and it is not painful for mum. In those early days, they might feel a bit of tender. They mightn't have had anything sucking on their nipple so frequently all day, every day. But it should be tenderness, but not pain. If it's pain or the nipple's getting pinched or distorted, it means that baby's not quite right. And usually it's the attachment. So you can see this beautiful attached, big wide open mouth, the chin in deep to the breast here, and big wide open mouth, and the cheeks are almost touching the breast, and the nose is free. It's helpful for a baby to breathe. But more important is this big wide open mouth. And like I say, cheeks almost touching, big, in really, really close to the mum. All right. And this photo. So this is pretty good. The other one was great. This one's good. For me, I'd just like to have that mum bring that baby in closer so that chin's in deeper, and again, so the cheeks are touching the breast in just closer. So that would be my suggestion there. But it's pretty good. The baby's mouth's pretty wide. And then there's the next one, this attachment. Did you all grab your breasts, put your hand up? Oh, so I hope there might be some men watching. I bet most of the women went, oh. Yeah, I don't know about that attachment. Mum doesn't look too worried, funny enough. But yes, this is what happens if a baby isn't attached well. It's pinching those nipples. And the mum can get really quite damaged nipples from that. All right. So the other thing apart from attachment is feeding positions. Now, in those early days, we talked about how long it takes for a baby to feed. They can take a long time. So the mum needs to be comfortable. So they can be in any position. These are just some positions. They can be in any position they like, as long as the mum feels comfortable and the baby's in nice and close and has got that good attachment. All right. Classically, this is the one that most mums would go for in a relaxed thing, or lying down's fantastic for nighttime feeding. These are great positions. Or this is sometimes a useful position in the early days as well. I do have to say something about pillows, that often we have to watch with pillows. You guys don't need to know this. Sorry, I'm going into too much depth here. But basically, sometimes the pillows can be more of a problem. The best thing would be to position the baby and then bring a pillow in if the mum needs it to support her arm. Anyway, that's enough of that one. But main thing is they get comfortable. Another thing we talk about these days is baby-led attachment. We say these days, but it's been around forever, you know, generations ago. This is how mums would have fed their babies, where they lean back and the baby actually finds the breast themselves. So you can see also the mum here is skin to skin. She's got a top off and the baby's just wearing a nappy. Skin to skin is a lovely thing to do with your babies, and the dads can do this too, just not quite feed them, but they can be skin to skin and give that lovely time with that baby. But in breastfeeding, this can help the baby find its way to the breast. They can do this themselves. So the mum puts the baby up against their breast, usually leaning back in between their two breasts, and you find the baby wiggles on down and actually gets on the breasts themselves. The mum just provides the environment and the baby just finds their way to the breast. Often this is done when a baby's first born, hopefully, and that first hour of birth, a baby's delivered up onto the mum's chest or tummy, and we call the breast crawl. But the baby has this reflexes for about 3 months of age of finding their way to the breast. And they often get on better than us actually putting them on the breasts when we do it. And this is a mum doing it with the clothes on. They don't have to be skin to skin necessarily. And she's looking pretty happy and relaxed. Sorry, it's a little bit blurry, that photo. But that's that baby, just she's leaning back comfortably and the baby's in there feeding well. All right. So how can you help? So one of the fantastic resources for mums and families and for any workers is the Australian Breastfeeding Association. It's Australia-wide, but also with links to around the world and recognised as a great source of information. Okay, let's see if we just click on this. I've got my assistant just come in. Fingers crossed it's going to work. Okay, but this is what you can show the mum. Click on this. Oh, okay. Here we go. Let's see if it works. Righto, fantastic. Can you see that? Steph, can you see that?
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay, here we go. So again, you can help the families find this. And this is a great resource for yourself. If you think, oh, am I giving the right information to this mum? You can go to this website and have a look. And we're going to click on the information tab. Oh, there it comes up. And there's heaps of information. When we're talking about in pregnancy, if you want to have those conversations with your families, if you're dealing with pregnant women, there's this tab here about before the baby arrives. Hope I don't jinx myself here. And all this information about before a baby arrives, and it's really important they get some of this information to start with. And a great thing to show them or to suggest is breastfeeding plan. Now, they don't have to have a breastfeeding plan, but might as well click on it. Keep our fingers crossed everything's going to work. Breastfeeding plan with explanations. It's sort of like a cheat sheet to go with what you do and why you do it when you're wanting to breastfeed a baby from day one. So it gives you all these great ideas. It's just sort of a shortcut than reading a whole pile of stuff, telling you what suggestions, what to do, and also why you do it. So I really recommend that to my parents that come in and see me in pregnancy. Okay, so the other great thing to look at here is videos. And lots of videos. And when you drop, here we are, position and attachment, of course. I'll just drop it down, and there's a whole list about position and attachment and about laid back breastfeeding, like we saw that lady laying back, and baby-led attachment. So there's lots of information there. I'm just going to go back. And what we're going to have a quick look at now is breastfeeding basics, just to give you an idea. And hopefully it's going to load. Yep. And we'll just play this just for a couple of minutes. Hopefully we're playing this.
Alveoli, little hollow sacs with milk-making cells. From these alveoli run tubes called ducts, which carry the milk towards the nipple. The size of the breast is not related to how well it can make milk. By sucking at the breast, your baby triggers tiny nerves in the nipple, and these nerves cause hormones to be released into your bloodstream. One of these hormones, prolactin, acts on the milk-making tissues. The other hormone, oxytocin, causes the breast to push out or let down the milk. Some mothers will notice signs that their milk is let down, like a sudden fullness that may be a little painful in the early days. They may feel a tingling feeling in their breast or feel thirsty. Some mothers don't notice any of these signs. But what all mothers will notice is a change in their baby's sucking pattern, from short sucks to a long suck, pause, swallow breath pattern. You may have several letdowns during a feed with pauses in between. Things change a lot in the first few days after your baby is born and can seem very confusing at times, but you can expect that on day one, your body will produce about half a teaspoon of colostrum each feed, as your baby's stomach at this time is about the size of a marble. Your baby will have one sticky black bowel action and one wet nappy. On day two, 1 teaspoon of colostrum each feed, and 1 soft green-black bowel action and 2 wet nappies. In days 2 to 4, your milk will come in and your milk supply rises to 500 to 800 mils per day. There are several browny yellow bowel actions and 5 or 6 wet nappies. It is normal for your baby's urine to have a pink-orange tinge called urates in days 2 to 3. However, if this continues after 4 or 5 days, it could be a sign that your baby may not be feeding effectively. A slight yellowish or jaundiced appearance can be normal in the early days, but if there are not enough wees and poos, then it is important to contact your midwife, maternal and child health nurse, or the Australian Breastfeeding Association.
Right, I've just got a little bit more to play. Can you hear me, Steph? Yep. Okay, so I've just got a little bit more to play. I hope you love those poos. I had to get that in, didn't I? Okay, but also that beautiful jaw action of that little baby sucking at the breast, that tiny baby, and that's what we look for, that they're actually drinking, not just on there nibbling away. So we know that that baby's getting plenty of milk. There's just one more little section. I don't think there's any more poos in it, so you should be right.
When your baby first attaches, this should settle down when your milk lets down. And remember, breastfeeding is not meant to hurt. No matter what it looks like when your baby is at the breast, if you have pain, sore or damaged nipples, it is important to seek some help as soon as you can to ensure your baby is attaching and feeding effectively. Baby-led attachment describes how babies seek out and attach to their mother's breast. Here is a step-by-step guide to baby-led attachment. Recognising early feeding cues when they're still calm helps them use their instincts to find and attach to the breast. Holding upset babies on your chest, skin to skin with their hands close to their face, will help them calm and organise themselves. Gently reclining will make it easier for your baby to find the breast. You will notice that your baby will start to bob and search for the breast, and sometimes throw themselves towards the breast they want to go to. Once your baby moves to the breast, bring your arm around to support the baby so that the baby's head is in the crook of your arm and you are supporting your baby's bottom.
And twins even, hey? All right. Righto, Mel, how do I get back to my thing? Just go. All right. Are we good, Steph?
Yep, good.
Lucky I've got these techno people here. All right, terrific. All right. And also, I can't remember if Steph said or not, but any questions you have at any time, just jotting them down in the chat box as you think of them or as they come to your mind, just jotting them down, and we'll be going through questions at the end. All right, so these slides, okay, these slides are just in case I couldn't get that to play. So, but also I think you're getting the slides afterwards. So then it's just a revision of how the website and finding those bits of information and that breastfeeding basics, but there's lots of great stuff there. Yeah. Okay. So myths. Let's think about some myths that, and if you've got any of these myths, again, jot them in that question box for me at the end. Any more, let's see. Okay, so not enough breast milk, like we've talked about that. So that is a thing, whether it's real or perceived, and that's the thing to work out. Is it really a low supply, or is it the baby's behaviour? Not all crying is due to a baby being hungry. And just something there too, that around about 2 weeks, babies often wake up. They might have been perfect for the first 2 weeks, and they wake up around 2 weeks and start crying. Their crying starts to happen a bit more, and it can gradually increase up to 6 weeks of age and then slowly taper off to maybe even 3 months of age. And this is very normal. It's something that goes on in their development. Who knows why? Maybe it's for us to spend more time with them. I'm not sure. But it can be taken that that's what's going on, that it's the breast milk or it's the baby being hungry, when in actual fact it's what babies do. They just pick up that crying around about 2 weeks and might get even more so towards 6 weeks. So again, it's great for the families to know that not all crying babies means they're starving. All right, so breastfed babies need extra water when hot. They certainly don't. Breastfed babies don't need anything. We talked about that up in the tropics when I was out in the Kimberleys. Those babies never had water. I don't know how they were going to get it if they did. There was no bottles or anything. They just breastfeed more often. And if you like, the breast milk becomes a bit more watery, sort of, to meet those needs of the extra fluid. So no, babies don't need extra water. And breast milk dried up overnight. That is very rare to happen, if ever. Sometimes when women have a huge shock, like I think once I heard of when someone's husband was killed suddenly, she found her milk supply dried up. So it has to be something huge, but that doesn't always happen either. So it's very rare it dries up overnight. Sometimes it's gradually dwindling and mums haven't picked up on that. But more commonly, it's probably the baby's behaviour, like we were talking about before, that it's a normal baby behaviour and she's feeling empty because the baby's wanting to snack feed all the time, and she's thinking her milk supply has gone. So yes, very rare for it to dry up overnight. Milk not strong enough. So, yeah, this is a thing that some women look at because breast milk is very thin and watery. We'll go into that in a little bit more. And the other thing is that other babies are fatter. Some mums do wean because of that, because they see that other babies are fatter than theirs. And why are their babies so little? Maybe it's because the breast milk isn't strong enough. And that factor about strong enough, I had that this week. I had last week, sorry, a mum come in, and her mother, so the grandmother of the baby, had said, do you think you should get your milk checked? Get it tested. Can you get milk tested? Because maybe it's not strong enough. Maybe it hasn't got the right stuff in it. Breast milk has nearly always got the right stuff in it. So, yeah, that's not quite right. All right. And this is just showing a baby, well, it's a gorgeous photo, really. That's just why I threw it in, to be honest. But it could be a baby that's just, you know, needing extra cuddles. It's not smiling. I think it's very new, but it's not smiling. It's being cuddled in there. And sometimes that's all babies need, is they just need that extra time, that extra cuddle, that extra contact. And milk not strong enough. So, yeah, like I said, our human milk looks like it's thin and watery. It looks like skim milk. And that's because we're not cows. We're used to seeing cow's milk with its heavy calcium and heavy contents of all sorts of other stuff that as humans we don't need. We don't grow like cows. We don't have these heavy bones. So breast milk does look like skim milk, and that is normal. And that's where this comes from, people thinking their milk's not strong enough. And other babies are fatter. So if we have a look at this graph here, so if we look at a one baby, this is normal. This is a World Health Growth chart that we use in our child and family health clinics. And this is a baby at 1 month of age, and it weighs 3.4 kilos. This is a baby at 1 month of age, and it weighs 5.6 kilos. These are all normal babies. So there are going to be babies bigger and there are going to be babies smaller. What we look at more is this pattern of growth, that the baby follows those growth curves. That's what we want to see. If a baby was up here at 1 month and across here at 2 months, this is average, this is the 50th percentile. So you'd think, oh, well, that's all right, it's on the 50th percentile, but it's not, because it hasn't put on any weight in a month. So we're looking at those patterns of growth, not one random dot where the baby is. If the baby is here at 2 months and was here at 1 month, that's perfect. This is all normal babies' growth, and we're looking for the pattern of growth. So other babies fatter? Yep, that's going to happen, and it's normal. Okay, so how can you support the families that you work with? So the first thing has to be your language. And I don't mean swearing. Fortunately, I haven't done that today. Steph, I was worried, but anyway. So it's that non-judgmental language. It's using evidence-based, well, yes, evidence-based, we're going to go into that a bit more, but it's non-judgmental and not giving conflicting information, knowing what's normal. Because sometimes they do get a lot of conflicting information. People say, oh, my sister did this, my auntie did this, I did this. We want to come from an evidence base. So by knowing what's normal, you can discuss that with the mums, or like we said before, help them find that information. Which is, yes, the next thing, keeping yourself informed. And knowing your limitations. You're not expected to know everything. Even me as a lactation consultant, I don't know everything. But it's trying to seek out those sources and find out about it. And yeah, just working within your own limitations and knowing what your role is with that family. And of course, assisting and empowering them to seek information. And like we saw, that website is fantastic. What they haven't got on it, they've got links to other sites that have got the information. So it's the go-to, that ABA, Australian Breastfeeding Association. So empowering them to do it is the best thing, helping them find the information, giving them those resources, and supporting their strengths, you know, encourage them in what they are doing well. If they're having a hard time, you know, encourage them and saying, but look what you're doing. You're doing a great job. And it's always about their breastfeeding goals. It's supporting them with what they want to do. So it's finding out what they want, not what you think they should be doing. It's what they want to do. So that's your biggest role, I suppose. One of them is to find out what they want out of this. Okay, and then going from there. And saying to a mum, if she's really trying to breastfeed and saying to her, oh, it doesn't matter real much, just, give formula, that's not going to help her, because it's not what she wants to do. And she probably knows that, no, formula, it's there and we certainly need it. I keep saying that. But if we can, first of all, see if we can fix up what's happening with breastfeeding first. And then the mums should not feel guilty. If they've sought out information and had help and it's not working, like we said before, their mental health and emotional health and bonding with their baby is much more important. But they will not feel guilty if they felt they've done everything they could. All right. Okay. So just another cute baby. Sorry, can't help myself. So what local support is available? So here we have it, Child and Family Health Clinics. I don't know where everyone's watching from, but and this is what's difficult, isn't it? An online thing. Normally I'd be bouncing around the room. Well, yeah, I would. Anyway, so Child and Family Health Clinics are everywhere. So if you're in our health area, they go up as far as Woolgoolga, down as far as Laurelton, I think, and nearly everywhere major has a Child and Family Health Clinic. Up to Dorrigo, which is where I work as well. Maxville, Southwest Rocks, Warhope, all those places have Child and Family Health Clinics. So we're everywhere. And if you're in the northern region, you've got lots of them there too. Lactation consultants and breastfeeding clinics. So here in Coffs, we have a Child and Family Health Clinic run breastfeeding clinic. And in Maxville, we also have one there. In Port Macquarie, I believe you have a breastfeeding clinic at maternity. It's for the first 6 to 8 weeks of a baby's age. There's access through maternity there for a breastfeeding clinic. Also, you have the Australian Breastfeeding Association, obviously. You've seen that. It is fantastic. I keep raving about it. So they've got the great website. They have the helpline. It is a 24-hour helpline. It is run by mums in their own homes, but they are trained in breastfeeding and trained in counselling, and they know they're on duty for that roster. So if in the middle of the night mums are desperate or dads are desperate, they can. I've had dads ring me in the middle of the night and ring me to help get help. So that's available for them, and it's Australia-wide as well. There's also local ABA groups. If you're coming from up the north, around Lismore there's a fantastic active ABA group up there. Ros Fleetwood is a colleague of mine who's fantastic. But also we have ABA groups throughout the area, some more active than others. Down in Port, I think it's called Hastings, have a group down there. Further south, Manning, Coffs Harbour are a group, but they're trying to get going again, get more things happening. And even though we're in COVID times and not necessarily be able to have group meetings, there's a lot of online groups happening too. And I haven't listed it there, but for pregnant women, the ABA also runs online breastfeeding education sessions. So you sign up for those. There is a cost, but it also gives you membership to the ABA, and that's what ABA also has, is a membership, a year-long membership where mums get lots of extra access to breastfeeding and child-related resources. So they're great things. And the app, there is an app on the phone. I'm sorry I didn't get a photo of it, but mums can download a free app called Mum to Mum, and that's the Australian Breastfeeding Association. All right, so we're looking at from early days. Hope you can see these tiny little eggs here of this damselfly, that we're supporting mums from those early days right through till they have their families and having that safe environment you can see these guys are in, and they're all looking out for each other. Hey, there's a partner here helping out here in the way they know best, or it could be an auntie maybe, or a grandmother. Here's mum with the baby, I presume, and here's the toddler helping, hopefully, I'm not sure. But anyhow, as a family group, and that's what we're here for, yeah? Providing that safe environment and supporting the families that we work with. All right. And of course, our aim also is for mums to enjoy their baby, or families to enjoy their baby, which I think someone's enjoyed dressing up that baby. Looks like they're swimming. I thought it was the goggles on that baby's forehead and they were swimming. They look like they're swimming. Freestyle. Okay. And then just some references here that some of the posters, breastfeeding strategy. If you're working with mums, sort of on the edge, I suppose. These are great articles that are recent, 2019, about all those other supportive things and about that importance for mums to be supported with breastfeeding, or at least providing their breast milk to their babies, is a wonderful thing for them to do to help bond with their babies. All right. Baby-led breastfeeding is a great DVD. It's beautiful to watch, and parents love watching that. And there's the references to the photos that are in the slides. And teamwork. All of us to be on the lookout for ways that we can support the families that we care for. And that's the end of my presentation. And I suppose I'm happy to answer any questions. And my question to you is to have a think about this and